What's up, everyone? Today, I'm joined by Mike, Eric, and Sebastian from the Jenner-Mendoza Team. This week, we talk about the rental market in New York City and the future of development. Check it out. I'm Jake Garay from the Garay-Mashaw team with Berkshire Hathaway, and you're listening to my podcast, Selling the Suburbs. I'm sitting down with real estate agents, investors, experts, and various professionals throughout the industry. On Selling the Suburbs, we're discussing the truth about real estate, entrepreneurship, and the ever-changing housing market. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it. It's great seeing you guys. Yeah, so for people who don't know about you, about your team, about what you're doing, kind of take us through, you touched on it before we got started about like the, how you got into the business, take us through that, that progression of the last 10, 11 years of the business.
Yeah, well, I personally was looking for an apartment at the time, and I just was working with brokers that really just didn't really care about anything when it came to actually finding you the place. They cared more about their commission. I think we all, kind of fall into the category of being young here, I would say.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Mike's pushing it,
But these were people that were a lot older. They didn't relate to us at all. I saw that this gentleman over here was looking for new agents, and I was like, you know what? Like, yeah, I'm young. I'm in college. I'm not really caring about graduating at this time, but I know I could probably kill it. I've done sales forever, so I'm like, I could probably kill it. I hit him up. We met at a Starbucks not too far from here on 54th. And
this honestly, when Mike was young.
Wow.
How old were you?
I was like 23, which to him was old.
That was old to me. Yeah.
You were a seasoned vet.
I don't even think I could drink at the time. I don't know. It was like really, you can't drink till you're 21. So yeah, it was before that.
Oh man, you were like, what, 19, 20? 20 years old maybe?
Yeah, it was really, really young. So, I did that. I didn't really care about school anymore. I got, seeing everybody around me, like I was playing college football at the time, and I got hurt, couldn't play anymore, so transferred schools, transferred here into the city, and then I saw it like, damn, like, what am I even going to do with life now? You know what I mean? Like, my previous business kind of flopped. I wasn't really doing anything else besides working out and going to school, which I didn't really care about. And then I found him, and I found real estate, and I always thought real estate, you had to have a lot of money to get into, or be, from a family that has a lot of money, or have some sort of connect. You have to do all of that stuff. And then, honestly, I started with him. 2 weeks later, I had a big ass check, and I was like, okay, this could be something, And I remember I showed you the check, and then you were like, nah, that's not even real. That doesn't make any sense. And I was like, bro, I was with the client for XYZ time, we did this, walked them through what we did. And, at the time it sounded like big stuff, but it really wasn't a lot of, groundwork in the sense that you had to, file all these papers and do all this extra stuff. It wasn't anything where it wasn't rocket science. It wasn't something where I had to figure all this stuff out. Honestly, it was just like, I met him. He was cool. I was cool. And that was about it. That was the end of the story. And I was like, all it really took for me was to realize that being a people person was like the most important things in being in sales. So, and I didn't really have that before. It was more like system, where anybody could be plugged into that system, make a lot of money.
That's how the last business, that's what it's based
on.
Like traditional sales training.
Exactly. So I feel like that was it for everything. But then when I realized, I was like, now all of a sudden, everything that I've done, is out the window. And here I am with sales experience that doesn't really matter. It's more just being a people person. And me and Mike clicked from the beginning. At least I would like to say so.
We'll get Mike's opinion on that in a minute.
Yeah. So
we had our ups and downs, but we're still here.
And that's how it all got there. Honestly, like now we're here, 10 years later, and it's still the same story. It's still the same story, doing the same exact thing. Just in terms of volume, obviously that's changed a lot, and we've taken on a bunch of bigger roles than what we were doing back then. Definitely in much bigger positions. Striving for the next one.
So Mike, how did you, because you've been in it, so you were in it 3 or 4 years at the time that you met Eric. How did you get into real estate? Was it something that you always wanted to do, or was it similar thing where it was like kind of on a whim?
Absolutely not. Firstly, it's going to sound like I'm copying his story. I went to school.
But you
in the
did it
city.
first, so he copied you.
My story
I
sounded
guess,
cool.
yeah.
So
No,
sounded inspiration.
no, I was a freshman, ending my freshman year, and right around that time, I dropped out of school. So I needed an apartment because you can't be a dropout in a dormitory.
Newsflash.
My roommate and I went the traditional route, used a broker. It's my first time. I didn't ask about any broker fees. Got hit with a huge broker fee in the end on a crap apartment. It was an awful experience. Guy was like 55 years old, but we wrote him a check for $3,500 on a $1,800 apartment. So like
15%.
15%, and I immediately was like, I can do this better. I am better talker. I look better than this guy. I know a lot of people. Like
Damn,
I
this guy's
feel
getting
like
roasted.
he was terrible. Looked like a Ninja Turtle. But honestly, that was the birth of it. The student route really came about. I had a friend who was going to Iona. He had a friend who bought a couple townhouses. They were renting them to students, and he was making commissions. So immediately I was like, students, I've got my real estate license. I know thousands of students in New York. Facebook was the social media platform then, not Instagram in like 2012, 2013. So
Don't y'all feel old?
yeah,
Don't y'all feel old?
we hit the Facebook groups. And by the time I met Eric, I had gone the traditional route, working at a big brokerage, working like with a senior agent, then, doing my business through their platform, to deciding I want to start my own company. Terrible idea 2-3 years into the business when you're 21, 22 with no money. But that's how it started, and that's why I met Eric in a disgusting Midtown West office on 54th Street. Had to meet downstairs at Starbucks because it wasn't that presentable.
Yeah, if I
took
saw
off
it,
from
I'd
there.
probably be like, "This is not."
Yeah,
He made it sound like
it was like a
so
second
busy.
date thing. I'll bring you upstairs.
Yeah, it was so busy in that office that there's no space. We can't meet
Yeah.
there. It's got to be in the Starbucks nearby. It can't be in that office.
That's awesome. And then Sebastian, how did you get in? And obviously you had a previous relationship with Eric, but
Yeah.
what made you decide to make the jump and join these guys?
Yeah. So my story is very similar. The only difference is I didn't go to college to begin with. I just never
You saw them and they were like, I'm just going to skip.
I was like, I'm just gonna, pass go, collect 200. So me and Eric obviously we're friends after high school. So we're trying to put together every harebrained scheme to make money. You know what I mean? And whether it's a social media marketing agency, I'm Amazon FBA. I'm just kind of like looking into anything I can do to start a business, get something going. And when he got into real estate, he told me he was getting his license, but not really. Like he told me after the fact. Like he went, got licensed, started getting after it, closed like a deal, and came back to me like, "Yo, we should get into real estate. Like I've got my license, I'm getting going." And I was just like, "Nah, I don't want to be in real estate." You know what I mean? Because I don't know, it wasn't as sexy at that time. It wasn't something that you young people were doing much of. I was like, my dad used to be in real estate back in the day. Like I have no desire to do that. I want to do something sexier, so to speak. But when he showed me like that first check, I don't even remember the amount. I just knew I was a comma on it. And I was like, how long have you been doing this for? And, so he's like, this is my first showing. And I was like, all right, maybe I should look into this. Because obviously I was like, if Eric can do it, I can do it. You know what I mean? That was always my, well, yes, not like that, but.
That's what you said?
Not like that, but, I consider myself like a similar skill set. You know what I mean? It was like, I can probably figure this out as well too. So I meet Mike, that same office, but actually saw the inside of it that time. But I was already sold. Once I saw Eric's success, I was on board with whatever. Mike kind of walks me through the idea, kind of what they do with the business. I go get licensed. I get my license in like a week and a half. Like online course, 75 hours, power through it, schedule my state exam. Next thing I know, I'm shadowing Eric on showings, and it's basically awesome to go from there. Literally from the day that Eric showed me that check to when I started doing showings, it might have been like 2 months in between, where it's just like, immediately saw the result. I was like, well, I can do this too. Go and get licensed, get involved. And at that time, it was very much like, listen, here's your list of the day, showings that we have set up. You're going to be running the tour, client name, email number, contact them. We'll start at this address. take them around New York, show them, you know, as many apartments as possible that fit their criteria. They had a wonderful, beautiful system already laid out. So all I had to do was just jump in and bring sales acumen and personality, you know what I mean, and make it work from there. So that's kind of the basis of it on my side.
I don't know if you guys remember this, but I vaguely just remember like 8 or 9 years ago when you guys were just getting in the business. I think all of us met for dinner at like an Olive Garden when you guys were just starting.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Sounds really familiar.
I don't know if you remember. I think it was over like the
literally-
east side.
Yeah, I completely erased that memory, and I just like thought of that. You guys were, I think you were just getting in the business or something, and we were talking about, you guys were in the city, I was up in the Hudson Valley, and we were just talking about, you guys were talking about, and I was so confused. You're like, yeah, we like rent to students, and you were explaining that model, and it was like completely foreign to me because, you know, we didn't do it, we did rentals, but not a ton of them.
Yeah.
Right. So it was like a completely different, but that just triggered in my memory, like you guys just getting started and we were talking about that. I was like, what the hell?
I'm pretty sure I got hammered during that dinner. I'm pretty sure. I remember just drinking whiskey and like trying to break down like the leasing process and the way it works in New York and like, you know, what we were doing. I do remember that now. That's funny. That was a long time
Yeah,
ago.
it was.
Wow.
So for, you know, people who don't know about your business, like tell us, what do you guys do? What do you specialize in? You know, obviously I think you guys now have over 2,000 apartments that you represent and lease, you know, and you're the #1 leasing brokerage in Midtown and Uptown Manhattan, correct? Is that right?
I wish it was Midtown, but we're up and coming. We've got some projects here as well. Definitely in Harlem, top residential leasing team for rentals.
Bunch of Harlem Harrys.
Yeah, Harlem, Upper Manhattan, and South Bronx very
Okay.
soon. We've got 3 projects opening there. But we're focusing heavily on new development leasing. Again, back to your point, as far as rentals, you talk about rentals to any agent outside the city and right away broke. Like you're not making any money. New York is the only city where you can build a business off of rentals. But I think the normal trajectory that every agent takes is they start in rentals, they get some traction, then they go into sales. Sales is sexier, there's more money. That's a career. This is like how you start your career. Our model is there's a lot of rentals happening. A majority of buildings you see being built on the residential side are rentals because there is way more upside for that than there is for condo sales in New York. That's not just my opinion. I think any developer that, you know, can secure a tax abatement to do a rental building is going to go down that route because they can make a lot more money. So our goal is to perfect the leasing process. We're at this point, you know, in the business 5, 6, 10 years, whatever it may be. Very few agents have that expertise and time in the rental business. So our focus is rentals, new development leasing, and we are very strategic as far as the markets we work in. You know, we're not a jack of all trades trying to work Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, whatever. We focus on the markets we know, and it's Harlem. That's where we have, you know, luxury buildings on market today. That's where we have projects coming to market over the next couple of years. And developers see that, they understand that anytime there's a building being built, if, you know, it isn't Eric sending me the address on the notice outside the first day it goes up on the shed, or it isn't me finding it online, that developer at some point within the first year of building that building is hearing from us. So, I mean, that's what we did. We started with students, but that was really just a building block. Again, we attacked a market that we could reach. We were young. We were the same age as these students. We could reach them on social media. Same as today, like we have a plan, we have a market that we go after. And I think there's really no other team or brokerage that focuses on that business. Like I said, I think a lot of companies really focus on sales, and not to say we don't do sales, but like this is our bread and butter.
Okay. No, it's interesting. You identified an underserviced market, right? And you've perfected that process. And obviously it's a testament to your success now that you guys have done that. Otherwise you wouldn't be in the position that you're in. So for people who don't understand the leasing process, let's say someone wants to come to New York, you know, what does that process look like for them? You know, take us through that. Like, you know, I want to move to New York. I live in Idaho. I call you guys. What's that process, that system look like?
Yeah, I think unlike a lot of the country, New York City is a much more strict rental landscape for the landlords and for the tenant side as well too. So when you're coming to New York, your qualifications for getting an apartment might be drastically different from wherever you're coming in from. In your example, Idaho. So your typical situation you're coming into is most New York City landlords, they'll ask for about 40 times the monthly rent and yearly income, and usually a credit score of anywhere from 650 to 670 or better. That's kind of like your baseline standard. And then from there, you have the option of using what's called a guarantor. Think a co-signer, but not quite. They're signing onto the leases basically back up. And then usually if you're using a co-signer or a guarantor, they look for 80 times the monthly rent and yearly income combined between however many guarantors or co-signers you're using. Similar credit requirements of 650 to 670 or better as well. So a lot of people, they hear that it's a shock. It's quite a lot. Part of the reason why it is so is because in New York City, rightly so, a lot of the laws are geared towards the tenant side. In a big city, you want to make sure that people are protected. You know what I mean? So you're not just having people getting run over in the process. You don't get an apartment, you're getting kicked out for no reason, things that can go on. So because the laws are slated in that way, landlords tend to be a little bit more strict up front because that's their only way to kind of protect their investment. So for instance, if I'm a landlord, once someone is moved into the apartment, let's say I have to go through an eviction process. Oftentimes I'm spending more money in legal fees than it's worth to get that person out. You know what I mean? By the time I actually go through the 6-month process, I've wasted and lost more money. So because of that, most landlords tend to be strict on the front end, try to get the best person as possible or the most qualified person as possible for your place. That way you make sure you actually collect your rent, over the course of their lease term. So going into that process, we always want to prepare people for that, where it's not just telling them qualifications, but explaining to them, here's why it is, here's why it works. And then on the documentation side, usually what they're looking for is proof of income. So, if you're traditionally employed, usually it's like an employment letter or a pay stub. They'll usually look for, government ID, of course. And then typically just a couple bank statements just to prove you have the funds to move in. So most places, first month's rent, 1 month's rent for security deposit on average, and then a broker fee. Industry standard is 15%, but depending on the building, depending on the situation, you could pay less, you could pay no fee at all. But that's usually what your process will look like from start to finish. And then, if you are in Idaho and you're doing it virtually, thanks to COVID, pretty much a lot of rental processes are done online where you can do a virtual showing, leases signed virtually, funds paid virtually, schedule a key pickup, and then basically move into your apartment when you land in New York. Or do the more traditional route, visit the city, take a week, run around, look at a lot of buildings. Street Easy is the big one there, along with the Rent Hops of the world and the Zillows of the world in terms of actually finding your spot, or hire an agent to kind of do it for you. Give them your list of qualifications. Here's what I like to have. Find me places that match that. Take me out to see them.
Sounds like you got it down to a science.
You must do this.
Yeah, too often.
And now, obviously, people who aren't familiar with New York, they may not know about co-ops. How much of what you do is co-op work, right? Or versus condos or other types of housing?
We don't do, every now and then we'll do co-ops and condos. Usually it's more so just rental buildings. In a co-op or condo situation, you're usually working with an individual owner, right? So it'll be a person where they physically own that apartment, they bought it, and then, they'll come to us just to rent it out. So in that situation, co-ops and condos, much more in the application process, much more strict even. You usually have to provide more documentation because it has to go through board approval, which is, the co-op situation here and condo situation in New York City. So usually it's a much longer application process as well, because typically the board of the building will only meet maybe once or twice per month. And then on top of that, you'll have condo fees or board fees or association fees. I think the best way to kind of liken it is, let's say you own a home and you have an HOA fee and you kind of have like your HOA organization. That's similar to what a condo board might look like. And the reason they have that is because obviously in the city, you're not owning a plot of land. you're owning a piece of a building, so to speak. So all the people that are in the building all kind of have equal say, and the board is there to represent the interests of everyone who lives in the building, and they can take care of the smallest things, such as how do we do trash removal, or what are our procedures for getting the hallways cleaned, all the way up to applications coming for people to live in the apartment. Are they approved? Do we find them qualified enough to live here? Do they meet, the income requirements we have set out? Things like that. So we try, well, I don't say we try, but we usually don't do that much of that. We stick more on the rental side. So developers, larger management companies, the condo co-ops, if you're getting a new one that's built, it's for sale. Typically, you're not going to have a lot of rentals unless it's an individual who specifically wants to rent that spot. So, just by the numbers of the game, you get a lot less of those versus your typical rental landlord, rental building management company situation.
And if it's a co-op, like if you're a consumer and you see a co-op for rent, don't do it. I've done probably 3,000 rental deals so far. I've completed 0 successful co-op rentals.
It's a nightmare.
The board meets like once a month at best. There's a million hidden fees. That $2,000 studio that looks like a sick deal, it's not, because it's going to have a $1,000 app fee, $1,000 move out fee. You're going to have a interview with like 3 different grandmas. Like co-ops can legally discriminate you. Like it's just not going to go well.
So I was trying to sugarcoat it, but
yeah, if you're trying to find an apartment and like someone tells you, yeah, we'll get back to you in 30 days, and we might tell you, no, we don't like you because you're young or whatever. Like just go find a rental. It's New York City. So, and no one's building co-ops. Like co-ops are on the decline. Like anything that's built now is a condo. So, co-ops exist today, but 10, 20, 30 years from now, co-ops may not exist. So.
I'm always amazed, as I'm sure you guys are familiar, and it's a big topic for agents, with fair housing and all the laws and the constant, development and change in that co-op boards are even really allowed to exist, right? Because like you guys know, on the landlord side in New York State, lawful source of income is a protected class, age is a protected class, familial status, all these different protected classes, and a co-op board can almost like seemingly throw all of that out, because you can come to them and say, oh yeah, here's my lender, here's my, whatever it is, I meet all the requirements financially, and then a lot of the time you can still be denied. And so I'm always amazed that there hasn't been like, you see all these lawsuits, class action lawsuits on rentals and landlords and, landlord-tenant dispute, but you haven't seen that challenged anywhere. I feel like you're probably right. It's only a matter of time before someone goes after them and does something with that.
Yeah, it's like the wild west a little bit. It is. Yeah. It's definitely one of those things where not quite the even playing field, so to speak.
Right.
But it is what it is.
So you guys seem to you if I'm understanding correctly, a lot of your business is in buildings dedicated strictly to rentals, whether it's new builds, whether it's pre-existing. How much of your business or how much new development are you seeing? Is it, you touched on Harlem. I know that's been a market that's been prime for new development. What markets are you seeing those developments in? Like, where are you seeing the market going right now?
Yeah. Construction in New York City is always kind of a tricky game, you know what I mean? Because you do have zoning laws that are put in place, and obviously, you have a lot of historically protected neighborhoods and things of the like. But what we're really seeing is Harlem, I'd say along that 125th Street area, a little bit less lax when it comes to the building code and whatnot. So you're seeing new development take place there. South Bronx is also a bit of a hot spot, I would say, in terms of new development taking place. I'll be honest, I think a lot of what is fueling that growth in Harlem is also the overflow of downtown Manhattan, downtown Brooklyn, Williamsburg, as
people
prices,
being priced out.
Exactly. As people get priced out of those areas, developers see opportunity to be able to build cheaply or, less expensive up in Harlem, over in the Bronx, able to offer a better price while still giving people the same quality of building. So, it's almost like I don't want to call it a land grab, but in a sense, it's what it's become. If you want to build in Williamsburg, the cost is, you're going to have to charge quite a pretty penny for rent. And it's just demand. Everyone wants to live in those cooler neighborhoods. So what happens is you look at areas like Harlem and the Bronx, and it's like this is an opportunity where, one, you can be similar commute time to downtown if you work in Midtown or something along those lines. If you work in the financial district, you might be looking at the same commute coming from, Prospect Park versus, West Harlem. And so because of that, that's where we're starting to really see a lot of growth. It's kind of where we specialize. So I say we see a lot of growth because it's also where we spend a lot of our time. But I'd say it's kind of where the market's at.
And I think the important thing is to build a rental building just feasibly because of the price per square foot buildable, you need 421A. You need the tax abatement, and that's been repealed. So that is going to be a huge difference maker in the next 5 to 10 years as far as what you see built. With 421A, like I was saying before, like building a rental property is the most profitable way to go in New York City, way more than the condo route. But with 421A repealed at this point, you really don't have that option. Like if you bought a plot of land or a building, you knocked down, you're building new construction. I don't care if it's in Midtown or in the Bronx. If you're building without 421A, you have to build a condo. 421A, it creates the need for the inclusionary affordable component where landlords have to do 70% at max free market apartments, 30% affordable. But now if I'm building a rental building without that tax abatement, I can build it 100% free market, but the numbers just don't make sense. That same building where I'm not paying taxes for the next 20 years, I'm getting slapped with a $200K, $250K bill every single month, and it just completely cancels out your rent roll. So like right now, we've got a lot of new buildings opening up because owners took advantage of that 5 years ago. Between now and 2026, which is like the deadline to have your buildings done for the 421A program, we've got a ton of buildings coming to market because landlords are rushing to get that product on market by Q1 2026. After that, you're going to see either the policies change, and that's fingers crossed because my business depends on it. But if not, then you're going to see a total shutdown as far as new development, like coming to market in the leasing space. You may see more condos come back. You may see owners renovating old buildings, whatever, getting a little bit more creative. But like the way it's heading now, you're going to see a ton of new development over the next 2 to 3 years. And then after that, we're going to have what we have. We're not going to be able to build new development that makes sense for free market tenants unless policies change.
So what you're telling me is at a time where affordability is a major issue, they're repealing something that allows for more affordability.
I could give you a list of like 5
Can you
things that the
explain
government
why? But what is the
doing that
logic?
makes it worse.
What is the logic for that? Like, what is the reasoning that they're saying that this? Obviously, they wouldn't do it unless they felt that it helped the consumer in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. What is that argument? Because as I'm hearing you talk about this, all I'm hearing is higher rents, less inventory, less supply. Just going to price people out even more.
It's an unpopular opinion, but every single time you see, let's say on 125th Street in Harlem, which is not considered a great part of town right now, new building goes up, immediately the first word that comes to anybody's mind is gentrification. Whereas the way I see it, it's the polar opposite. And I sound like such an asshole saying that, but yeah, 70% of the apartments come to market at rents that are like astronomical for the area. Like clients will look at it and say, why the hell am I paying $4,000 for a 1-bed in Harlem where, my grandma's rent stabilized apartment is $800 a month. Fact of the matter is 30% of apartments there were created for affordable housing. They are through the housing lottery given to residents of that community, and they're given the opportunity to stay in Harlem, which otherwise they may be priced out of. They get an amazing apartment at a market rate, which is similar to a rent stabilized apartment. And from there, that 70% that pay a massive, rent compared to the rest of the area, they're paying taxes that go to that local community. They bring business.
Taking a building that's either non-existent or
Exactly.
falling apart, and you're providing clean and nice housing, updated housing for people.
But a great example is there was a project on 145th in Lenox that got shot down this year. It was a 500 plus rental project, 500 plus units. They kept going back and forth as far as getting the plans approved because the city kept saying we need more and more and more affordable housing. It eventually got shot down at 60% affordable, 40% market. At that point, the owner couldn't build anymore because the bottom line didn't make any sense. But I think, like, you know, the government has absolutely zero understanding what it means to be a real estate developer, what it means to be a landlord. And there's a disconnect when it comes to how do I make the bottom line make sense for me to make a living off this building versus, you know, at what point are you going to keep squeezing and squeezing and squeezing until I can't make any money? And that's unfortunately what we're seeing.
So now they end up with, so even if you said 50-50, they could have had 250 affordable housing units, and now they're going to have 0.
Now they're moving forward with a warehouse plan, and that's 0 apartments.
Right. So how does that help?
And it's like one of the things that I always think to myself too is there's always a little bit of a common sense component where it's like, you know, you hear about the idea of gentrification, but you also have to think about supply and demand, right? One of the reasons why real estate is so expensive in New York City is because we lack enough residential, you know, properties. So by building new buildings, it helps with the supply. And a small byproduct of that is it also levels the market a little bit. Because at the end of the day, if a new building is built in a neighborhood, right, and they're asking X amount of dollars for rent, and you have all these amenities that go along with it, what that means is, one, there's more actual homes that are available to be lived in, but also it keeps the existing real estate from becoming too expensive. Because if I have a 2-bedroom that's 1,000 square feet and it's you got to get up 6 flights of stairs to get there, and I'm charging X amount of dollars for it, I then have to compete with the new building with all the glitzy amenities. So it kind of keeps prices in check versus you have people paying astronomical amounts of money for apartments that might not be up to par with what else is out there. And I think that's also a little bit of a small, like, natural byproduct of having new development, because very much you'll go into neighborhoods like the East Village where you might pay an astronomical amount for a very, very small space. But it's just a supply demand issue. There, if you want to live there, that's all there is available. Versus if you had more new development, it wouldn't cure that problem, right? Because pretty hard to do, but I think it could definitely help alleviate in that aspect as well too.
Yeah, I mean, that's like basic supply and demand. That's like economics 101, right? If you have more supply and demand stays constant, then prices come down.
Yeah.
So, it's just like any other business. If you have active competition, it keeps you from pricing yourself so astronomical that people stop going to your business.
Exactly.
But if you don't have any competition, you can charge whatever the hell you want because, you said, oh, people are questioning why I would spend $4,000 a month to be in that building. Well, if they're getting that price, there's enough demand to command that. But if there was 100 other apartments available that they could choose from and they weren't getting that number, then their price is too high.
Exactly.
So it doesn't really make any sense. So you guys work with a lot of different developers in the area. Have you, between these types of laws, because of people, and I think what's happening in New York City, and you see it a lot, is obviously the affordability issue and the supply issue, the inventory issue. But that's something that's happening all throughout the Northeast area, the tri-state area, right? You hear about it in New Jersey, you hear about it in Connecticut, you hear about it in New York. And a lot of what we've seen in those kind of sub-markets, meaning the greater New York metro area, is that overflow of people who are saying, I can't afford New York City anymore. So they're moving to those markets, looking for better deals. That's why you see like an area like Hoboken that's so popular. You see people who are commuting into the city from there, or in Westchester County, or in Connecticut. And so are you seeing, between the time frame it takes to get these buildings approved and the red tape that they have to jump through, and then you tack on top of that the very unfriendly landlord tenant laws that they've put in place, are you seeing developers who are looking at other markets and other areas and just saying, forget it, we're not going to touch New York anymore? Or are they still looking at opportunities that are here?
I think the ones that we work with are the ones that are trying to stay grassroots, trying to stay here, because they know that a lot of people are probably looking other places. We worked with the developer one time who was looking out in, I think, what was it, like Utah or something? And it was just a upside down project. Like, it was absolutely gorgeous, but it was in the middle of nowhere. But it was near an airport. And that was like the only thing that made sense. for them out there, but they ended up selling it at a loss because they realized it just doesn't make sense. I mean, we're making more money here, even if it's just skimming the dollars here. So
Yeah, it's haven't seen as much. You know, I would say we see more on the consumer end, where you'll find people who are like, hey, I want to rent really short term because I'm in the process of buying. You know, I'm looking to move, whether it be in upstate, Westchester, Orange County, Jersey City, Hoboken. I feel like we run into that a bit more versus actual developers who are looking to leave the city. Ultimately, the developers want to be here. You know what I mean? You don't necessarily, or not all of them, at least the ones we're working with, are looking to leave. They prefer to build here. They're already here. This is where they're established.
They know the market.
They know the market. You know, it's a different animal to be able to go to a different market and then try to make the numbers work, so to speak. Just because construction costs are wild. In terms of just like materials, labor, inflation in general, it doesn't just apply to the numbers you see in the grocery store and at the gas pump. On the business side of it as well too, all those numbers are much higher than they once were. So, you know, to be able to build in other markets, it's all about the bottom line of does this make sense? And depending on where you're at, just being able to figure that out might be, you know, more of a risk versus staying at home, so to speak.
I think also once you play in the league, you're not going to want to go play in the minor leagues. Like nobody, you know, makes it in the show and then wants to play AAA ball later. I think once you're making New York money and these developers know it, you're not going to make that money anywhere else. I mean, maybe Miami, LA, like some of the really, really big guys we work with, like they're already involved in these cities, especially during COVID. Anyone with real money was doing both New York and Miami or somewhere in Florida at the same time. Like we've got guys that like they base their business out of New York, but they buy mobile homes or like big rental projects like government housing in Memphis or like somewhere in West Virginia, and those tend to end up be like their tax write-offs. But I think like primarily they focus on New York because, like you said, supply and demand. The demand is just so eternally high in New York. Doesn't matter COVID, seasonality of the rental market, government conditions. Like there's always demand. You are always going to get top dollar. Yeah, it fluctuates like everything. I mean, it goes up and down based off of all these external factors. But end of the day, there's no better place to be a landlord for your bottom line than in New York. I mean, Jersey City this year became, I think, the highest median rent in the entire country because of the amount of new dev that was happening. And yeah, some guys are involved here and in Jersey. But, you know, I still think that there's a stigma today crossing the Hudson River. Most clients are considering only being in New York, and they would consider Brooklyn and Queens and South Bronx, even though I live in Jersey, he lives in Jersey.
And I live in Brooklyn.
But I still think like today and for the next 5 to 10 years, New York's the rental king, and it's going to stay that way.
Yeah, and I think I agree in the sense that that's the counterpoint, right? Like New York is the epicenter financially of the entire country. You know, everything happens here, and that's what's the demand factor for the entire area. So I was more so curious just because, you know, like as you said, so I guess the other question is then, you know, these landlords, these developers who have been looking at these different projects now with the laws changing, are they then going to just change their model to just, like you said, doing sales then, doing condos? Because that's a different model as well. Like how do you see this playing out over the next 3 or 4 years?
So problem with the condo market right now, if I'm purchasing, I'm not purchasing in New York because I just don't think you get that return on your investment from like the consumer standpoint, common charges, taxes, your eventual resale price. I just don't think it makes sense.
Like you're buying because you want to be here. Financially, there's not like a lot of gain to be had. It's more so I just want to be here, and so I'm going to go ahead and buy and have a place where I can call my own and live in the city. There's not going to be much of a financial return, you know, at least not in the near future for anything like that on a consumer level. Yeah.
And as a developer, I mean, if I build a new dev condo today, I mean, looking at today's sales market, I'm waiting 2, 3, probably more years than that to actually get a full sellout on a building. Whereas if I'm doing a rental building, like one of our most recent projects, 240 units, basically a full lease up within 3 to 4 months. So, if I'm a developer, I don't go the condo route today, but without the tax abatement there, I have no choice. I have to go the condo route. So either, the interest rates come down, it becomes more of a buyer's market, it makes more sense, or essentially we're stuck in a weird place. I don't think we can have no incentives for landlords to build rental product and have super high interest rates preventing people from buying. But I feel like in today's market, it's becoming less and less possible to purchase an apartment. So why would I build apartments for purchase?
Right.
And I think the scariest part is getting stuck in that weird place. You know what I mean? Because if one side of the market gives on the developer side, then the opportunity to grow is still there. I think the only interesting moment is when it's like it's no longer profitable to build rentals. It's no longer profitable to build condos.
So what do you do?
We're just kind of like in limbo.
It's definitely not going to be office. It's not profitable to build office. So.
And, I think it'll be profitable to purchase office.
Maybe all
soon.
Warehouses.
Yeah.
Amazon.
I think it'll be profitable to purchase. I don't know if it'll be profitable to build those. And
that's to Mike's point, right? Where you start looking at rehabs instead of ground up construction, right?
Yeah.
Then the other problem that's preventing and honestly just perpetuating this issue with affordable housing and having enough housing for New Yorkers is rent stabilization. That's equally as big of a problem as 421A being repealed. There's over 25,000 vacant apartments in New York today that are sitting there. They're going to continue sitting there because it's too expensive to rehab them, get them up to code, get them up to a livable situation to actually rent it. With what the baseline rents are today for those rent stabilized apartments. So with the new rent laws that passed in 2019, I can't necessarily spend X amount of dollars and see that reflected in my new rent stabilized rent that I have to offer the tenants. I'm stuck at what the number is, and I can only go up by what the rent guideline boards increases every year are. So a lot of these units, it's impossible to put $200K into them and then collect $800-900 a month. You'll never see the end of that. So there's a twofold issue. One, it's impossible to build, and two, it's impossible to rehab rent stabilized apartments. So that's not going to change until the government changes.
So it sounds like you're between a rock and a hard place in a lot of these issues.
Go
to Jersey.
Yeah, a little bit. yeah, a little bit. And I always like to be optimistic about it and think that we're not just going to be left in a spot where we're at like a standstill. You know what I mean? I think eventually something will change. I think, opportunities always come out of difficult situations. It's just hard to look into the future and see exactly what that's going to be like until changes are made. But, I think at some point, things are going to hit the fan, you know what I mean? And when they do, I think that's when we'll see the changes that are necessary. But time will tell. Yeah.
I think it's going to take people recognizing some of the economic points that you guys are making, in that eventually people just get so fed up with the lack of affordable housing, with the lack of being able to even live somewhere, that it'll have to change in some way or another. Unfortunately, a lot of these things, it takes a break in the system for things to actually happen and change.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at the market today, what are you seeing in terms of demand? Is it very active? Are you seeing a lot of demand, and how long is it taking to lease these apartments? You mentioned before a full building you can do in 3 or 4 months. So it sounds like it's still very much an active market. Then it sounds like there's still a lot of demand, right?
Yeah, I think for the right product there is. I feel like COVID changed a lot of the landscape of what New York really is. Obviously, we're seeing it with the office market. But I think overall, along with people getting priced out, like we talked about earlier, of Midtown, downtown, and the popular areas in other boroughs like Williamsburg and things like that, we're seeing a lot of the products that is built for people who are either working hybrid or working from home going a lot quicker, even if it is smaller. And what I mean by that is that even if the apartment is smaller, if the building itself just has more amenities, like, I mean, back in the day, not even back in the day, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, if you had a building that, it was considered top of the line with having, luxury amenities if it had like a children's playroom. Now we're not seeing that built at all. We're seeing it, you're having a co-working space and people are not needing to go to a WeWork, and people are liking their commute from home. Now a lot of people have dogs and whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I know I got a dog, so like you got a dog too, so you're next probably. So, like all of these things, like you want to be close to home, or, have some sort of schedule where you're not committed to the office every single day. So I feel like for the right products, the products that are in line with the right transportation, but location's always everything, but also just, even if it's a smaller project with smaller apartments, even less amenities, but as long as they're offered, I feel like for that type of product, it is. For the ones that don't have it, it just, if it's not priced right, it's not going to move right now. We're seeing people get really, really picky at this time of year, which, is justified, as we all know back in the day, you had the fall and everything. Oh, that's when prices go down a bit. We're not really seeing that too much just yet. We are seeing a lot of places add more concessions and, try to promote that, that renter to come in. But realistically, it's just the places. I mean, even that build that we were talking about with 240 units, we're practically done with it. I mean, granted, we hit it at the right time in the summer, but also at the same time, it had the right amenities, and it was the only building in the neighborhood that had that.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many showings we'll do where someone will say, like Eric mentioned, I work hybrid, so I'm working from home 3 days a week. And I'll show them a building where I'd say it's a larger, maybe a nicer apartment, square footage layout. And then we'll go see a smaller place, but they've got, co-working space in the building downstairs. And their eyes light up because it's like, oh, I can like leave my home, head down the elevator, have office space, do my thing, come back up for lunch, walk my dog, go back to work. And on my work from home days, I still kind of get that separation of space. And
you get Wi-Fi on the roof and all this stuff. Like, people are looking for those kinds of things, and I think that's what's moving more than anything else.
So what are the top 3 or 4 amenities that you're seeing people want right now? Like, what are those things that if you see it, you're like, okay, this is gonna be a hot building because it has these things?
A really good gym, a co-working space, having laundry in your unit, and some sort of concierge.
Yeah, I would say laundry in your unit became a COVID thing. Like, the cleanliness factor of using a laundry room, or let's just say even outsourcing it to a laundromat, I think became a huge sticking point. So washer, dryer just became the number one thing. Dishwasher. I mean, to anyone outside of New York, you're like, shit, how do you guys live like this? But
we don't even have ice makers.
I would agree. Gym, co-working, some outdoor space. I'd say pre-COVID, like the stupid line that every real estate school would tell you, like top 3 things for an apartment were location, location, location. Now it's like location, but then there is like a 2 and 3. I think COVID changed that.
Yeah. And I mean, you think about the day-to-day of what life looks like for someone when you work from home, being able to have a really good gym where you don't have to have a secondary membership, so you can work out in the morning, get ready at your apartment, go down to the co-working space, do your thing, step outside for some fresh air on a roof deck, being able to do laundry during lunch because it's in your apartment and you don't have to go out to a laundry room. It just kind of, it reflects the life that a lot of people are currently living with the hybrid work from home model. And for the most part, so far, I'd say that's kind of like the desired model. A lot of people aren't wanting to go back to the office full time. So building homes and apartments that reflect that, I think, is the smart thing to do. Kind of ties in with the consumer. So
it sounds like from all of the things that you guys just listed, it's like convenience, right? Convenience and time saving.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, you think about people now and like something like Amazon, right? It's all about saving people time. So people are just valuing their time more and more and more. And, what I'm hearing, walk the dog, go to the co-working space, do your laundry. It's all right there. So you don't have to go 15 minutes to the laundromat, 10 minutes to the park, go to the WeWork that's a couple blocks away. Like, you're saving yourself a couple hours a day, but you're still getting that separation, but it's just all right at your fingertips. It's convenient. So, I mean, that checks out. I mean, it's what we're seeing even like, in the suburbs with buyers. You know, it's all about proximity. Obviously, you're not walking most of the time, you're driving, but it's I want to be a couple miles away from the gym. I want to have the grocery stores, all of that right there. Easy accessibility to the city is always a big, big demand factor, and commute is a big, big demand factor as well. It makes sense. I mean, it's what people want now. It's so to your point, it makes sense to build the housing that meets those demands.
Definitely. And I mean, I guess with the rates the way that they are, I know it's kind of like a hot topic. What I don't have on your end, I'm curious, because your business is so big, it might not be as big of an effect, but do you see any dip off in people who are wanting to buy, or maybe people adjusting their expectations, buying maybe smaller than they were expecting to make the numbers work, things like that?
So you segment out a lot of different conversations because, like, so for example, if we're looking at a luxury buyer, a lot of those buyers, they don't care about the rates because 90% of those purchases are cash. So it's more about inventory. Now, at the luxury market, there's a lot more inventory. So then all of a sudden they have a lot more choices. So it's almost like a more advantageous time for that buyer because it's a cash buyer with more choices and they're very picky. So if they find what they want, they'll buy, but they could also look for 2 years because it's like, we don't need this.
Right. Okay.
On the sales side, we're in a very much like need-based market. So if you don't need to buy or need to sell, you're not moving. Because why would I leave my 3% rate to buy a 7.5%, 8% rate at a 25% premium compared to what that house was a year and a half, 2 years ago, right? So with that being said, the higher qualification buyer, it's funny because as the price points go up, those buyers have a bigger impact on their payment, but they're less affected because they typically have higher qualifications. They have a little bit more choices, so they'll adjust, right? So let's just say they were going to spend $1 million, now they'll spend $800,000, but the drop off in quality in most markets is not that significant. So they'll just buy anyway. But you are seeing at the lower price points, those buyers are just priced out. You know, so if you have someone who is looking at, and we saw that effect a lot more 12 months ago because of how rapidly the rates rose, right? So it was like, oh, we were 3.5% in May and we're at 7% in September. You know, it's November. And now all of a sudden it's like, wait a second. So those buyers were in bidding wars, and we're still seeing bidding wars. Like, it's still extremely common to see maybe not 15 offers on a house, but we'll see 2, 3, 4, 5 offers. We'll see over asking price. You know, list to sale price is still very close to, if not above, 100%. So it's not like we've seen a dip in pricing. We've actually seen about a 2 to 3% increase in pricing. But what we have seen is about a 30% drop off in number of transactions. So it's funny. I have like this big like vendetta against brokers right now because everybody you talk to in our markets are like, business is down, the market sucks, the market sucks. And I'm like, you know, shit, the market sucks because you're telling everybody how bad the market is. So they're not putting their home on the market because you're telling them that it's a bad time to sell, but yet their house is worth 3% more than it was a year ago. It's like, so your house went up in value, but the market sucks. So you're telling them not to list. And that's what's making the problem worse. And that's the big thing is transactions are down a lot. Volume is down a lot. Prices are not down. If anything, they're up slightly. But where that falls over the next 6 to 12 months, I mean, we could see rates at 9 or we could see rates at 6.5.
Yeah.
You know, it could go either way. If we get under 7, it's off to the races. Transactions will continue. Demand. There's so much backlogged demand because now what we're seeing is all these people who are just waiting for rates to come down. You know,
that's one of the reasons why I wanted a little bit. I wanted to make sure that what I was seeing, if it was what I thought it was, because every now and then we come across people who are renting on the higher end. So you're talking about $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 per month, and they're buyers.
Right.
They're buyers who are just waiting. And then we'll come across them and, you know, they'll rent something with us and they'll have that conversation with me of, hey, what do you think the rates are going to do? Where do you think it's going to go? Because we're in the market. We want to buy. We want to sign only 12-month lease with maybe option to leave early because, you know, we're actively looking. And as I come across those, I wonder to myself, you know, what are you kind of seeing on your side? So it makes sense with what we've seen on some of the renters side as well too, especially when you have, you know, younger families. You know what I mean? People with growing families. tend to see that. They're the ones who are looking for the 4 bedrooms, the 5-bedroom spaces, because they need the room and they would prefer to buy, but they're like, I'm waiting for rates to take a little bit of a dip. Or, I got beat out on a home and now we have to rent, things like that.
And there's, I think, a lot of misinformed buyers out there who are leaving the market because they see headlines. They see all the headlines are sales are down, mortgage applications are down, transactions are down. Nothing is like, oh, prices are down 15%, 20%, right? It's not like they're saying prices are down. They're saying all the agents and mortgage brokers are making less money, right? That's all they're saying. And yet, so people see that and they think the market is trending downward. Let's face it, buyers and sellers, they don't care how much money we make. They care how much they're paying and how much they're selling for. And so they see these headlines and I think they think that because things are trending downward that they can buy for a cheaper price in 12 months. Not thinking like, well, hey, if you're waiting for rates to go to 6.5%, 6%, 5%, whatever they go to, don't you think that there's a big segment of the population who has that same thought, who's also, and remember those people you were bidding against at 5% and 6%? They're going to be back bidding against you at 5 and 6% once again.
Versus where they're not there right now.
Right. And it's like right now, again, need-based market. So if you're a seller and you need to sell, that means that you have to sell. So whatever someone's going to pay for your place is what they're going to pay. So if you're on the market 100, 150 days, which we're starting to see days on market going up again, why not try and get a good deal today, lock in the price, and in 12 to 24 months refinance? Because we're not going to stay at 8% forever. Our economy is not built around these interest rates sustainably for the next 5 to 10 years. It's only a matter of time. Now, if that happens during an election year, which some people think, if it happens because of, international conflict, or if it takes another year and a half because inflation isn't coming down as rapidly as it should, eventually it's going to. But then again, you're going to be paying a potentially 5, 6% premium on the price, which is fixed, versus the rate, which you could get a good deal at and have maybe 5, 7% appreciation over the next 12 to 18 months.
That makes sense.
But a lot of people don't necessarily hear that. The headlines don't match that narrative. And so they're sidelining themselves. And they're the same buyers who in 2020 and 21 said, oh, prices went up 20% last year. It's going to crash. We're in a bubble. And they could have locked in a 2.75% rate. And instead they never bought. They paid $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month. They paid, $36,000, $48,000, $60,000 a year in rent for 2 or 3 years, and now that same house is $200,000 or $300,000 more. So they lost out on $200,000 or $300,000 in equity, and they paid another $100,000, $150,000 in rent, and they're looking at it and saying, "Well, what did we just do?" Yeah. Right? The market didn't crash. Everything that we were told was incorrect, and they draw comparisons to 2008. And what they don't understand is that in 2008, we had 22 months of inventory at the peak of pricing. So when the prices were the best, when everybody was making all this money, there was almost 2 years of inventory that was available. Yeah. Right now, we're at 2.5.
Very different supply game.
So it's a completely different, we don't have, 90% of homeowners have a rate under 4%. We don't have a whole influx of inventory coming in 5 to 7 years when we have ARMs going from 3 and 4% to 8%, doubling people's payments, right? Which is going to create a big, tidal wave of foreclosures. We don't see that. Defaults are at a 40-year low. And so where is the inventory coming from to drive pricing down? Now, if rates go to 10%, yeah, prices are going to come down. But are rates going to go to 10%? Do you want to play that chicken with the market? Right? Do you want to play that game and see where things are going? The people who did that 2 or 3 years ago lost out significantly. And so that's the conversations that we're having. And we have seen a lot of those highly qualified people go in rentals. And a lot of it's young people, right? Because they have that flexibility. Yeah. They have the ability to wait 12 months. They don't have 2 kids. They're not looking at a school district. They're not looking at, they maybe work a hybrid schedule and they say, oh, I can stick it out for another 12 months. But where this all lands, it's hard to say. We can't predict. I always tell all my clients, you got to look at it as an odds game and just play the odds. Yeah. Right? Odds are in 18 months, rates will be less than they are today. Yeah. Odds are if that happens, prices are probably going to go up over that time frame. So if you are a buyer, if you're thinking about buying, you should buy. And let's face it, rents have gone up significantly over the last 3 or 4 years as well. So it's not like you're getting a deal. If you locked in a rate, if you're in a rent stabilized apartment and you're good to go, stay there forever. You know what I mean?
I always kind of make that joke.
But
I'm like,
that's-
listen, man, never leave.
That's not most people though.
Yeah.
And so, you're paying 3, 4, 5,000 a month in rent, and people I don't think understand the wealth that can be built if they do own a home, right? So if you bought in 2017, 2018, 2019, whatever that time is, not only are you getting, the benefits, the tax benefits, you're getting the forced savings, but you're also just getting the equity. So yeah, if you're going to live in the house for 3 or 4 years, maybe you're not a buyer. But if you're looking at this and saying, I'm here for 10, 12, 15, 20 years, buy the damn thing. Look at it at a 15-year rolling period. Take any 15-year and look, from year 1 to year 15, find a time where the year 15 was cheaper than it was in year 1.
Very rare.
I think it also became really cool over the last 2 to 3 years to get rich quick. And real estate, rarely does it offer you the opportunity to get rich quick. It is the long game.
Yep.
Whether it is for the equity or even if you're doing rental income, it's not going to be something that gets
It's
you
not
rich quick.
sexy.
But crypto, buying GameStop, like all of these ideas, I think were so like popularized on social media that buying real estate seems like it took a back seat for a lot of young investors or people who had money, because they will rent and they think they can get better returns by going stock market or crypto or whatever it may be.
It's a shift in the psychology, because that's a great point. And I've noticed that like people are always like short term. Like I'll talk to investors. They're looking to buy a 2-family property and they're like, I want to make $2,000 a month. And I'm like, you're coming out of pocket like $100,000 and you want to make 25% cash on cash return on your money. Like, what do you think this is?
Yeah, expectations are...
Versus all three of you have a very similar story in that you were young, looking for something to do, and you said, I'm going to go out and build a business, right? You didn't say, I'm going to go out and get rich overnight. You said, I'm going to go out and build a business that's sustainable for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that was the mindset 10 years ago, but it's not the mindset that people have today. People aren't going out there and saying, let me start a business, let me figure out a way to build something slow and steady, predictable, and start it as a side hustle or start it as whatever. People are looking for that get rich quick, and it's not there.
My dad dropped some good advice on me, and it fits very much with what you're saying there, where he was like, listen, you it's hard to get rich from investing. You can get wealthy from investing. So the investing you do is your hedge. That's how you grow the money that you're bringing in. But if you're not going to be bringing in the money, the investing can only help you so much. And so, something that you mentioned, it's like the paradigm should be, where can I build my income? How can I grow the money I'm bringing in? How can I build business? Then take that money and invest it in a more long-term strategy, versus thinking I'm going to invest and I'm going to get rich investing, where, I'm going to make this investment and all of a sudden I'm going to start making a lot of money. You should be building a business, building an income, even if it's through a job. You should be advancing in your career. And then that money that you're making, you start setting aside to invest, because it's hard to get rich quick off of investments like that Bitcoin wave, that NFT wave. That's not normal. And I think for it's just, it's tough to do, and it's not impossible, but you might be better off, even if you're going that route. I think you should also go down the path of, what can I build? What can I make? What can I invent? What can I create? Where's my value? What skills do I have to bring my income levels up? Because if you're able to do both, well, you strike gold, and if you only do one, you'll at least be able to make it through, so to speak. So that's internet's been an interesting place.
So shifting gears, where do you guys see, your business going, the market going? I know we talked a little bit about what's happening and the next 2 or 3 or 4 years in, the rental market, but what is your guys' focus now for the company, for the team, over the next, 12 to 18, 24 months?
Staying alive.
Growing and staying alive, hopefully. Yeah. The building out our team, bringing on new agents onto the team as well too. As we gain more listings, it's always making sure that we can keep the quality of service. So for us, that's making sure that we bring on enough agents to where, we're able to, one, run as many showings as possible. That's always been our namesake, so to speak, where we come in, we take over a building, and it's like, we're showing this thing 24/7, like no matter what time, no matter what day.
I'll remember that.
When I go to take, can I get a Sunday off? But no, that's the quality of service we look to deliver to management companies, building owners, landlords. It's good old fashioned, we're going to be out here working hard, showing your building to as many people as possible, developing a marketing strategy that works, that's effective, that matches where we're at in this day and age in terms of social media, photography, video, and for us, growing the team is kind of, I'd say, my main focus right now, and bringing agents on, training them in the right way, giving them the right skills in terms of how to effectively run showings, make connections with people. What we do is a very fast-paced transaction in the sense that I meet someone, I'm speaking to them for at most an hour, and then from there we're getting into the transaction process of getting their application going. But how do I, in that hour, effectively communicate, find out their needs, their wants, what they're looking for, put myself in their shoes as much as possible, and then being able to then think to myself, what inventory that we have, what listings do we have that might closely meet up with what they like, and then making sure we get them as many options as possible. So bringing on people that can effectively do that, showing them how to do that to kind of help fuel the growth that we're having. And of course, it's always more listings. It's always more buildings.
Yeah, I mean, between now and the end of this year, we're still bringing to market 3 new developments. So it's a combined probably 200 units there. We still have a lot of units available today. Next year, we've got 6 to 7 new developments coming to market, plus all the inventory we already have, all the re-rents. I guess like my goal and something I'm trying to figure out, like Bash said, the bigger the team grows, the more people we can service. But end of the day, the hard part about real estate is to make more money, you have to trade in more of your time. This is a business that 100%, you have to put in that blood, sweat, and tears, and that's your time. Unfortunately, getting insanely rich and growing every single year, it becomes very difficult in this business to do because you can only trade in time for so long before you're out of time. So I think it's finding ways in this next year to automate certain portions of the business, to empower agents to do things that we do today without us having to be a part of that on a daily basis. And then I think, there's a lot of tech that we're just not employing into what we do today through AI, Chat GPT. There's so many things that, from the simplest tasks like emailing with all of our clients, compiling applications, even to sourcing new landlords and developers. I feel like that's something in the next year that my goal is to automate that and to be less involved because I already feel pretty tapped out, but I got a lot to go. So again, we have to use our time more efficiently.
Yeah. I mean, the tools out there, and I think we'll see more tools come on market for agents in particular that are going to help make our lives easier. I know the fear was, that AI was going to replace agents, so to speak, whereas I think it's just going to be tools that come on that help agents be more efficient. So hopefully we see some of that start to develop as well too. I know you've got like fastreachout.ai for cold emails and things like that. I think you'll see more of those kind of start to pop up that can kind of help with the process.
Yeah, I think AI is interesting. I mean, it's like, the way I look at it is the same way the internet, you didn't have an agent who could handle 100, 150, 200 transactions 40 years ago. The internet gave people the ability to do more. So the top agents do more business and the bottom agents don't. You're going to see kind of that diluting that has happened historically is going to stop. And you're going to see, I think, more top agents do more and more and more business. I think AI is just a tool to help those top performers amplify their business where they can save some time. Because look, the real estate, you can either sell more or you can sell higher prices, right? That's really what it boils down to. There's only number of transactions or price, volume. Yeah. That's how you make more money. So if you can increase the number of transactions with different tools, I think that's what we're going to see. And it's funny. I mean, that's basically, Mike, to your point, where we're looking at things and saying, how do we amplify people's time? How do you build systems into your business? And I always harp on all of our newest agents, like, I know it seems mundane when you're working on maybe a handful of transactions, but build those systems and those habits into your business in that first year, because by the time you need them, when you're doing hundreds of transactions, it's too late. Like you'll be mad. You won't be able to get outside your own head. You'll have no time. You'll be working 12, 15, 18 hours a day. You'll have no life, and you won't have the time to set aside to go and deploy those strategies without losing clients, because now you're not spending time with them, you're spending time on your business.
Yeah, you play that game of you start doing well, and now it's like you almost have to go backwards to catch up.
Correct.
The rainfall, so to speak. So, yeah. We had a struggle. I had a struggle with that myself.
I think every agent does, honestly.
Big time. You have to get yourself organized. And that goes back to the business aspect of it. If young agents, you come in, it doesn't feel like a business, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I'm doing the damn thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as an agent, you've got to be a brand strategist, you've got to be a marketing strategist, an advertiser, a salesperson, you've got to have HR, you've got to be able to, have client retention and do all of those different things. You've got to have 8, 9, 10 roles.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it sounds. It's just, you meet someone, you talk to them, you sell it to them, boom, done.
That's what Eric made it sound like.
Yeah, that's how I got here.
He's like, I met Mike, I got licensed, I made a 4-figure check my first 10 days, and I just do that every 10 days, and that's it.
I don't know what else to tell you.
I was like, boom, I'm on board. I'm on board. How do I get my license?
He was a prodigy.
I heard this Instagram post the other day that it was something like, I don't have the time or the crayons to explain this to you. But that's that's kind of what it is. It's just but I think
not that easy for me.
Yeah. But I think overall, like these guys were saying, I think employing a system that's more perfect, which I think we always try to find that machine to be perfect. Then I think when it's especially like people that are here in this room, when you're looking at like high level performers, like you want to go ahead and be absolutely perfect. Kobe, Michael Jordan, any greats of all time in any sport, any platform, they tried to make everything perfect. And even when people saw them as perfect, they still wanted to be perfect. So they worked hard at it every single day. And I think that's right now we're in that transition phase where we're getting to max capacity in terms of what us three can do in a room right now. Yes, we have other agents with us right now, but we've tried the method of adding 30 agents at one point. That didn't go really well. Quality control is really hard at that, and I think at that time we had 0 system. Now we trimmed it down to about 8 agents and, core team here, 3 agents. So like things like that all come from having a perfect system. And I don't think that such thing exists, but I think being able to employ it and employ it really fast is probably going to be what we're looking at over the next couple of, months, weeks, years, things like that, just because overall, like you said, every single day is pretty daunting when you're working with a lot of agents, a lot of different people. And not only that, we're representing the owners and the managements too, which they're never just a single person. So it's, all of that, answering every single phone call. There isn't enough time for every phone call, even
it's
if
impossible.
It's just not possible. So I think,
something I always think about is making the leasing process as painless as possible.
Yeah.
There's certain things you can't get around, the qualifications, the paperwork, but from A to Z, not only just for the actual incoming tenant, but on the landlord side, how do we make it so you don't have to worry about this aspect, where you can worry about your development and management, and we can handle everything leasing A to Z. We do a really good job with that now, but there's always ways to fine tune and bring that value to a management company or a landlord and be able to take that off their shoulders, so to speak.
Yeah, and multiply it too, because not, every management has more than one building, and more than one listing open at a time. So, all of those different factors, especially when it comes to expectations, even just the expectations we have with ourselves in terms of how hard we work. I mean, we're all pretty hard on each other, I would say, but we're all pretty tired all the time. So I think that's, a big part of it.
Nice.
So if anybody wants to find all three of you, where can they connect with you? Social media, websites? How do they reach out to you guys?
Yeah.
So you can follow the Jenner-Mendoza Team on Instagram. My personal one is Eric-Mendoza553 at Gmail. I'm one of the guys on there. You'll see me. I'm the one with the beard. These two are the other guys.
No, it's big _ _bash567. Had holding strong since I was 19. Haven't changed it since. Or if you just go in Sebastian Arelis, I'll pop up through there as well too. Also on Instagram, Facebook, little bit, mostly for ad stuff. Yeah.
MySpace here and there.
MySpace here and there. I've logged in like once or twice. But
What about your Snapchat?
Don't add us on.
Do you want to give out your home address as well?
funny enough, I don't even know how to add like someone on Snapchat right now without the scanner. Like I don't even know what my handle is on Snapchat. I haven't like looked at that in years, maybe. But yeah.
That's what happens when you're in a relationship. But
you get old, man. You get old quick. You get old fast, is what it feels like.
yeah, and then I think Jener-Mendoza Team on Instagram. That's the best play to find us, see what we're working on. I think one of our goals this year is to be more active on social media. Again, like I think that's one of the factors that we need to like work on to get this business running without us having to like work 24/7. And then my personal page is the Midtown Mike, but
the Midtown
but well,
Emphasis
because there's
on the
another guy
V.
that's Midtown Mike, but I gotta switch it to Harlem Mike soon.
Well, thank you guys for coming. This has been a pleasure, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Thank you, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.